thank you for coming on with us today. Thank you for speaking to the Tribune. So we'll crack right into it. Carla, you're running for graduate officer, second year in a row. So how would you assess your first year as graduate officer, and what would you have done differently, if anything?
Look, I think I've done a good job given the circumstance. I definitely think that I had left 1 year master students behind a little bit, and that's something that I've focused on throughout my manifesto this year. And I feel I'll be able to achieve that, particularly because I'm not learning the role again, which is a huge part of what I do. You have to kind of learn the role in the first instance to be able to do it well. But I think overall I've done quite well.
Yeah. And this year you're running uncontested, as are few of the other candidate positions. Do you believe there's an engagement issue with the union? Given that you are running uncontested, and the fact that a by-election was needed last year.
There goes my internet. I do believe, there is definitely an engagement issue. I feel that we haven't worked out the ability to show our wins. We haven't worked out our ability to showcase what really the union is and what we can do for students. And I think that's something that we are working on and have been working on, but that we need to work on a little bit better. Engagement, particularly with postgrads, is difficult. There are a group of students who don't really engage with the SU very much, and that kind of shows through our class rep system. So I would love to kind of engage with that a little bit more, particularly the informal class reps. So the class reps that aren't part of the SU structure. Because I think they're a huge group who we are missing, particularly for graduate students.
Okay. And what methods would you like to put in place to make the position of graduate officer maybe a more enticing role?
I need to tell people what I do more. I know we have our sabbatical updates that we do. Everyone takes one, so it's every 6 weeks. Maybe that's not enough. Maybe we need to be kind of every second week, two of us putting something out and getting out there kind of what I do. Because the reason why I'm rerunning is because I love the role so much. So I think that needs to kind of come through to students. And as well, I don't think I think that ties into the engagement process. And I think I know loads of students who would be fabulous for this role, but it really is about telling them what the role entails, because there is a bit of mystery around the SU, and it's trying to break that down, I suppose.
Okay. So moving kind of more into your manifesto for this year, how big is the problem that international grad students face in terms of fees, and how realistic do you think it would be for yourself and the SU to push for lowering the price of such fees?
I think it's very realistic. I don't think it is. Apologies. I don't think it is an unrealistic request from international students. And I think it's a stark difference. I think it's a really big problem, and I think this can be changed, but it has to be as well with the help from the government, because we really need the government to step up here a little bit. This would be in relation to publicly funded education in general. This would then free up some of the reliance, I suppose, on international fees. And there's a huge reliance, I think, from UCD particularly. We've seen it this year, telling students to come here when they didn't really know what it was going to be like. So I think that reliance needs to come away. And with that, then you'll be able to lower the fees. There is the argument, I know that's the argument from the university, that essentially the way it works with Susie and all this type of, the funding from the HEA, that it's not possible. But I really think it is possible. I think it's about prioritizing what you do with your money. And if you prioritize correctly, then you are able to insert such things as lowering fees for international students.
Okay. And you know, on the subject of sort of, you know, fee increases and fund increases, you know, there was an uptake in the PhD conference fund recipients last year. Do you believe that further uptake is achievable, and if so, how?
So yeah, like that went from, yeah, it's in my manifesto, went from 20, which that's Connor would have brought it in at that. I know he would have liked to have had more to give it to more students, time didn't allow. And that was one of my manifesto points for last year, was to increase it from 20 to 35. So the increase this year is actually that big. And I think the need is there. It's a stark contrast from, you know, it's gone up at least 10% from last year, well, from Connor's year. So
Mm,
I do think it will keep going up. The more people that know about it, I suppose the uptake will happen. And I think it's COVID or no COVID, it's a very expensive thing to do. Actually, in a normal COVID year, you would have flights and accommodation as part of that.
yeah,
This year, a lot of the conferences are online, so the costs have come down. But conferences can come up to 350 quid higher, you know. So, and a lot of the PhD students kind of have to go to them to present their work. So it's not just about, oh, I want to go to this conference and it interests me. That is part of it, but it's not usually those that are presenting that will actually apply for the fund.
of course. And uh, moving into sort of creating spaces for research students. You know, given the fact that we're, you know, at the start of the year, maybe we would have been looking at September as, you know, a near guarantee for a return to Belfield and obviously Smurfit as well. How will, you know, the workspace that you have, you know, that you hope to create for grad students, how will that be substituted if the COVID-19 restrictions still remain come September?
So I would be aiming that it'd be a blended version anyway, Luke, because simply I wouldn't like to say we'd be in person and
Yeah.
we wouldn't, you know. So the aim, this is really, because this is part of my postgraduate month, and it would be really a space, virtually even,
Mm,
for postgraduate students, particularly PhDs and master lit or master research students, to come and showcase their work. So I would attempt to do this through schools, through or colleges. So linking in again with the college officers and doing it at a college level, because you would have, say, take for instance, engineering, you would have loads of PhD students really wanting to share their work, and undergraduate students really wanting to know what a PhD does.
yeah.
And again, that there's this mysterious kind of aura around research, and I just really wanted to celebrate that and highlight that. So it would really be about having sort of panel discussions around a topic that the PhD student has done, but just that we would facilitate that space for them.
Okay. And in a similar vein, you were talking about the kind of boot camps for grad students, like the shut up and write kind of boot camp. How quickly would you like to implement something like this?
So they actually do this through graduate studies, but it only happens twice a year, and they are increasing it. I am linking in with graduate studies on this. So I would hope to have the first one up and running in September. That would be the goal. And that would be done. You see, I need a bit of academic buy-in. So it's about reaching out to academics and finding out would they be interested in doing something like this. So it's about starting small, and it'd be a once a month type of thing, and then hopefully that you will grow from that. So I know I've kind of detailed it out in my manifesto of kind of what it would entail. And I suppose for the intensive writing part of it, you would need some academic help with that.
Yeah.
And that would lower the costs as well, because we would be doing it virtually.
Mm,
And usually the costs associated with something like that would be the food and the coffees and that type of thing. So if we get academic buy-in, which I hope we do, it would be really good for academics as well as their students. And I think this way then it'd be really feasible actually, and something that could carry on outside of my role and outside of my year.
okay. And the last point you brought up in your manifesto was on running a graduate trip, and you kind of went into saying how graduate students might not be the most sort of engaged with sort of events and that so on. And of course, this year, you know, the SU, unfortunately, due to the restrictions and so on, wasn't able to run many, if any at all, in-person events. But in terms of the student union's budget, do you believe it is feasible to run a graduate trip this year?
Yeah, I do. I would aim for second semester, to be fair. It would be subsidized, I will say that. Because a lot of the stuff we could do, you could go historical, you know, cultural, that type of thing, and it would keep it at low cost.
Yeah,
And then what we could do is pay for the bus type of idea to it.
yeah,
So yes, I do think we can. Yes, look, it's all in line with government guidelines, but I do feel that we could facilitate something, particularly in the second semester, would be a bit more of a realistic timeline for it. And budget-wise, I don't see why not. 4,000 of my budget will go on PhD conference funds, but I don't see why, looking at how I spent my money this year. And I obviously would hope to have some in-person events this
yeah.
semester or in September, or if elected, obviously.
Mm,
So I would love to have some in person, which obviously ups the cost of things.
mm.
But I don't see why there wouldn't be an issue with putting something on like that. It's not something that would be huge, and I can also link in with the entertainment officer who would have liked to do this as well, you know. So it's something that can definitely be done once government guidelines allow.
Brilliant. Okay. And then my last question for you is, what do you believe the biggest issue grad students are facing at the moment, and what can you do to improve it?
Okay, that's a bit of a question now, because
I'm
it
sure
would
there are a
depend.
lot of things that grad students
Yeah,
are facing.
definitely. Like, and it really depends on whether they're domestic students or international students.
Yeah.
I do think there is, not that all their needs are separate or anything, but that there is particular, as we spoke about at the start, the international fees, particularly.
Mm,
Fees, I think fees, in a big sense, and rising fees. The
yeah.
fact that they're not stopping, is a huge thing, and I plan to keep lobbying. I would love to see a publicly funded education scheme. That's what I would like to see. I don't agree with loans. I think, from someone who comes from a lower socioeconomic background, it puts a huge barrier in the way. I would never be able to get a student loan, you know, so I would never have been able to go to college. So I do think a publicly funded education, and fees particularly, and I know it's something that will continue outside of me. It has continued before me, you know, and it's something that I think every SU, until it's fixed, will keep campaigning on, and bringing forward the issue.
Grant. Okay. So, thanks a million for speaking to the Tribune. We wish you the absolute best in your campaign and for the rest of the year. And just, yeah, if you have any sort of questions, or you want to get onto us about anything, you know, throughout the next couple of weeks, or you know, next year, if you are a graduate officer, you know, you're always more than welcome to reach out to us, and we'd be happy to facilitate any sort of discussion or however. So, thanks a million for speaking to us, Carla, and have a lovely day.
Thank you, Lou. Thanks a
Great.
million.
Thanks a million. Bye bye.